Okay, so welcome to this PowerPoint or this presentation. This is using formulas. So the subject of a formula is the pronumeral that usually sits on its own on the left-hand side. So if you have an equation that looks something like y is equal to 3x plus 2, okay, the subject is just that letter that sits there on its side, okay? So example is the C in C is equal to 2 pi r. So C is equal to 2 pi r is the formula for a circumference of a circle. Okay, but the C is called the subject because it's the one that's by itself, okay? A formula can be transposed or rearranged to make another pronumeral subject, okay? So looking at the example above, we can rearrange it for r, okay? So moving everything else to the other side and make it the equation. So if we look at this, C is equal to 2 pi r can be transposed to give r is equal to C over 2 pi. And that's what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be learning how to do stuff like that. So question 1. State the letter that is the subject of these formulas. Okay, so this is pretty easy. So what's the subject? Well, it's the one that's by itself. In this case, it is the B. Okay. This one, again, it's the one that's by itself. That's V. And the one that's by itself, that is Y. Question 2. Substitute the given values into each of the following formulas to evaluate the subject, round to 2 decimal places. Okay, so A, we're going to find a half BH if B is equal to 12 and H is equal to 10. Okay, so A is equal to a half times B times H. Remember, so when the letters are next to each other, numbers are next to letters, it's times in between. So half times 12 times 10. So A is equal to half times 120, which is just equal to 60. Okay, and we're going to find what A is equal to pi r squared over 2 if r is 2 and pi is 3.14. So we're going to write A is equal to, so pi times r squared over 2. So that is equal to, so pi is 3.14 times r, which is equal to 2, so that's 2 squared over 2. And A is equal to, well, I don't have my calculator with me here, but I'm sure you guys can work out what that one is. Okay, so that one is just substituting values in to get the numbers back out. So 3. Substitute the given values into each of the following formulas, then solve the equations to determine the value of the unknown pronumeral. So basically in these ones, we're going to give you 2 of the values. So the F is this one here and the A is this one here. And then we have to rearrange it for M. So what we're going to do first is we're going to substitute our values in. So we get 12 is equal to M times 3. Now I can rewrite M times 3 as 12 is equal to 3M. Now to get the M by itself, we know that we need to divide both sides by 3. And that leaves me with M is equal to 4. Okay, I'll move that over. So M is equal to 4. Okay, C is equal to the square root of A squared minus B squared, where C is equal to 3 and B is equal to 4. So we haven't, I don't know if we've done these yet or not, but the opposite of square rooting something is squaring, okay? So if I have x squared and the opposite is the square root of x, okay? So whatever the number is, you just square root it. Okay, so let's substitute some values in. We've got 3 is equal to the square root of A squared minus 4 squared, okay? So what we're going to do is work out what 4 squared is actually equal to. So that is A squared minus 16. Now, there is technically brackets around these two like this, okay? So what we want to do is we want to actually remove the square root first. So the opposite square rooting is squaring. So what happens is we get 3 squared on the left side is equal to A squared minus 16. And I don't actually need the brackets now because the square root disappeared. So to remove that square root, I square both the sides. So that gets rid of the square root on the right and leaves me with 3 squared on the left. So I get 9 is equal to A squared minus 16. Okay, the opposite of minus 16 is plus 16. So I'm going to add 16 and I'm going to add 16. I'm going to put a little squared in there too, just to remind myself what I did. Okay, so 9 plus 16 is 25. 25 is equal to, that's going to cancel with that. That leaves me with A squared. Okay, now last bit. The opposite of squaring a number is square rooting. So a is equal to, so if I do a little square root and a little square root underneath those, so a, so the opposite of square in square is just square root. So a squared becomes a, and the square root of 25, well, that is equal to 5. Okay, so 5 is the answer for that one. Okay, so these are the examples that are based on question 4. So transpose each of the following formulas to make the pronumeral shown in the brackets in the subject. Now, you don't have to be given numbers to actually work out what to rearrange an equation. You can just do it with letters, and sometimes it's even easier to do. So A is equal to a half BH, and we're going to rearrange it for B. So we want B to be left by itself. Now remember, there's times in between each of those. So it is written as a half times B times H. So what's the opposite of the timesing? Well, it is dividing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by a half and divide by H, divide by a half and divide by H. Or in other words, okay, so if I'm dividing by two things, you can just divide it by the same thing. So a half H, okay? So what's another way of writing divide? Well, let's go to this side. So a half and H, that's going to cancel out and it's going to leave me with B. The same thing as writing a half H, or divide by a half H, is writing it as a fraction. So that's the same as A over a half H. Now, if I'm dividing something by a half, okay, that's also like if I was timesing it by 2. Because if you think of like, if I have a chocolate bar and I divide it into halves, okay, how many halves do I end up with? I end up with 2. So in fact, it's actually dividing by fractions is actually like timesing it by the number that's on the bottom. So what I'm going to do instead is writing a half on the bottom. I'm just going to put a 2 on the top. Now, that's just something that we can do, and I know that we can do, because I know that if I'm dividing by a half, that's the same as timesing by 2. So timesing by 2 and timesing by 2, that gives me 2A over H, which is equal to B, like that. Okay, I don't think I've left enough, oh, goodbye. I don't think I've left enough space for me on that one. So let me write it just under here. So 2A is equal to, or 2A over H is equal to B. Okay, C is equal to 2 pi r. Now we're going to get the r by itself. So again, we've got C is equal to 2 times pi times r. So the opposite is dividing by 2 pi and dividing by 2 pi. Okay, and so that's going to give me C over 2 pi is equal to r. And that's my final answer. So just dividing it by 2 pi. Now this is an extension one, which you don't need to know how to do too much. And I should say too, if they get too hard, you don't feel like you have to do them. Just try your best and see what you come up with, and we can help you out if you need it. So t is equal to 2 pi. Okay, so there's a times between these two, and it's a square root of L over G. And what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange this for G. Now, this is actually a really tricky question. And as I said, this is like an extension type question. You won't actually be asked to transpose something like this, but it's always good to have a look at. So if you want to skip ahead and not worry about this one, you can do that. But if you want to watch and see how it's done, then just hang around and we'll do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it over here because I'm going to need a lot of space for this one. So t is equal to 2 pi L over G. Now, remember there's times between these, so the opposite is dividing by 2 pi, dividing by 2 pi. So this is going to give me t over 2 pi is equal to the square root of L over G. Now to get rid of the square root, I know that the opposite is to square it, so I'm going to square both sides. Now when I square this side, okay, I square everything. So I basically say to myself, okay, what's t squared equal to? Well, that's just t squared. 2 squared is equal to 4, and pi squared is equal to pi squared. And that's equal to L over G. Now, I want to get G by itself. So there's a little trick I'm going to do this one. I'm going to flip this side, so I get the G on the top. And if I do that to that side, I'm allowed to do this to the other side as well, okay? So if I flip one side, I can flip the other side too. So it's going to give me 4 pi squared over t squared is equal to G over L. Okay, so let's continue that back up here. Okay, now that I've got the J on the top, I can then get rid of the L by timesing both sides by L. Okay, so it's going to give me 4 pi squared L over T squared, and that is equal to G. So very tough question, that one. Okay. But as I said, that's like an extension type question. You're going to be mainly focusing on these two for today. Okay, and then question 5 to 8. So all of 5 and 8 is going to look something like this. So they're going to be worded questions. The formula A is equal to a half BH gives the formula of an area of a triangle with breadth B and height H. Find the area of a triangle with height 15 and breadth 8. So all we need to do is just substitute those in. So A is equal to a half times the breadth, which is 8, times the height, which is 15. So 8 times 15, I don't have my calculator with me, so I'm going to do it at the top here, is 120. So A is equal to, I'll write it this way because I doubt I'll have space. So that's equal to A is equal to a half times 120, or in other words, A is equal to 60. Now transpose the formula to make H the subject. Okay, so we've actually already done this one, so we need to get the H by itself. Well, we've done one similar, but with B. So we need to get the H by itself. So remember, opposite of timesing by a half is timesing by 2. So times by 2 times by 2, I get 2A is equal to BH. And the opposite of timesing by B is dividing by B. So I'm going to divide by B and divide by B and get 2A over B is equal to H, like that. Move it up. So I'll do that one again, but I'll do it a bit higher up. Okay, so timesing both sides by 2, which is the opposite of timesing by half, because remember, timesing by half is like dividing into 2, so the opposite of that is timesing by 2. So we get 2A is equal to BH. Okay, then I'm going to divide by B and divide by B, and that's going to give me 2A over B is equal to H. Okay. Now find the height of a triangle that has an area of 100 centimeters and breadth 15. So this is A and this is B. Now we've got a formula for the height, okay, which we made by transposing, and we're going to use that, and you'll see that's the same way as if I was just to rearrange it with the numbers in. So H is equal to 2A over B. Okay, so that means that H is going to be equal to 2 times 100 divided by B, which is 15. So H is equal to 200 over 15, or 200 divided by 15, which is equal to, well, okay, let me have a think. So it's going to be 1. It's going to be in the tens, so 20, so take the 5. 50 divided by 15 is equal to 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be 13 and 5 over 15, or 13 and 1 over 3, or 13.3 repeater centimeters. Okay, so with that being said, that's all the questions that I'm going to be going through. You can double check, or the questions that you guys will be doing will be on the slides following. Okay, so you are more than welcome to use the PowerPoint to go through those and to check them. Okay, so thank you for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow with the next lot.